Hello and welcome to the SGLIVE 2021 Factorio and A Link to the Past Multiworld Randomizer Tournament. I am Eumenin, and we will be watching a race here between two teams of players. On each team, we will have a Link to the Past player and a Factorio player competing in the same seed, trying to achieve their goal of launching a rocket and most likely killing Ganon in each game, with the combined time of each racer on the team determining their final score. On our left side here, we have Megakidicarus playing Link to the Past and eudaimonistic here in Factorio. On the right side, we have Kippy and alwaysintreble, again playing Link to the Past in Factorio. And so we've gotten a quick start here. Looks like we have a standard start here in Link to the Past. The racers don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to be getting into on the Link to the Past side. It's a bit of a mystery at the beginning. They have a chance to get a start like this. There's also inverted. There's a chance that we'll have some sort of entrance shuffling, some chance for boss shuffling, a bunch of different options here, and the players will discover that as they play through. On the Factorio side, and just to give an overview for those of you that are not familiar with this kind of novel setup here, combining these two games, just like how all the items in A Link to the Past are shuffled in between all the different chests, in Factorio, our technologies that you would research become shuffled. And then all of the shuffling also happens between both games. So we might see a Link open a chest in one game and pull out a set of nuclear missiles for their Factorio partner, while the Factorio player may complete a research and send the Master Sword over to Hyrule and their Link to the Past partner. So with this particular setup, what we're going to see is a lot of early game setup here on the Factorio side, where our players are setting up a bunch of burner drillers, getting just the very basic bare bones part of a factory setup to get their first few quick researches done, just in case there is something essential for the Link to the Past player to get started with. And on the Link to the Past side, we see pretty much the basic early game. We see a Houlihan there over on Megakidicarus side, picking up some early cash. We'll see a Lumberjack cave check here on Kippy's side. Couldn't quite catch what was there, but he knows. I believe any sort of key shuffle, I don't remember if that's a part of this. I think there's a small chance for key shuffle, but keys will always be local to the Zelda player in this format. But in the multi-world at large, that can be configured that I believe your keys can be in any other games that are set up in your multi-world. So a little more kind of history of this. This is part of the Archipelago multi-world project or environment, or whatever word you want to use for it. Basically, there are currently 8 games that are all set up to be able to be shuffled in between each other. The two we're seeing here are A Link to the Past and Factorio, but there are also games like Ocarina of Time, Subnautica, Risk of Rain 2, Slay the Spire, Time Spinner, and Minecraft. I believe that's all of them. That you can get any number of players playing any combination of those games, all playing with their own settings, however they prefer to play, and you can mix them all up, and you'll start finding all sorts of things in all these different games. And it's a really cool system. So in this particular tournament here, it's one Link to the Past and one Factorio on each side, playing the same seeds. And we'll see how this works out. So in terms of what's actually going on right now, we have Kippy there in Kakariko Village. Doesn't look like anything's popped up on the tracker yet in terms of progression items, so we're still looking for our first important key items here on the Link to the Past side. On the Factorio side, we have the beginnings of power generation, which is the typical first step for any factory. You're going to need some amount of power generation, which will almost always come from some steam boilers into steam engines, generating that power in order to turn on your research labs and get your technology going to start finding both the items you need to eventually launch your rocket, along with potential key items that are required for your Link to the Past partner to progress. So, still not a lot going on right now. We're going to be keeping an eye out on the Factorio side. Most everything on the Factorio side is randomized, and particularly what we're interested in is the ingredients that will be for our red and green science packs, which will be used for all the research in this, in order to keep the time to completion on par with a Link to the Past seed. We have it limited so that the Factorio player is only ever going to need to produce red and green science packs. Their rocket silo research will only require red and green rather than the full suite of colors that you would normally expect in a Factorio seed. And then each of those science packs will have random inputs up to kind of a certain cost, such that you won't see something insane like enriched uranium required for your green science. You'll see mostly cheaper items, inserter arms, things that you would normally expect kind of around the same cost of what a standard green science pack would cost. And then in addition to that, the rocket silo parts, the things you create in order to actually build and launch your rocket, are also randomized. So that's going to be the things the Factorio player is really looking for is the green science pack, the ingredients to make that, and then the ingredients to make the rocket itself. So we'll try to keep an eye out for those things as we see the Factorio players looking at it. And over on the Alwaysintreble side, we see our first bit of fighter combat. If you happen to be watching the previous race from about 3 hours ago, we didn't get to see any fighter battles going on. They were happily deep. Uh-oh, we had a death over there. It's unfortunate. So everything in his inventory is going to be stuck over there in that forest guarded by those bugs in that worm. So he's going to have to come up with a quick plan here to try to recover anything that he might have had on his body there. So that's going to be a potential pretty big setback for that Factorio side. Meanwhile, on Kippy's side, we see him checking the back of the room here. 3 quick checks. On the Link to the Past side, you've probably seen several of them by now, but whenever you see that Starman icon pop up out of a chest, that means they sent a random technology over to the Factorio side. So the Factorio player would be equivalent to them having completed that research. And part of this randomizer to help speed it up and keep the Factorio player going is anytime you receive a research, you will get a free full stack of any item that research teaches you how to create. So, for example, in the case of Automation 1, you will get a full stack of 50 basic factories and 50 long arm inserters. And that will also include later on when the Factorio players research their rocket silo, they will get a full completed rocket silo into their inventory, so they don't have to worry about actually constructing the rocket silo. And then from there, having to build the rocket itself. So it looks like we might have gotten the corpse recovery over there, or he's picking it up now. So all the items that he had been getting from his Zelda partner, he's picked back up. So that's a good recovery there. He's taken care of this bug base here. It's always good to be proactive about taking out these bases. A factory will produce pollution. It looks like we already have green science packs over on eudaimonistic side. Didn't see what they require, but we'll keep an eye on that. But for pollution and for bug bases, as your factory grows, when the players look at their map, you'll likely see a large red kind of plume of pollution coming out from the center of their factory. And when that reaches a biter nest, they will start to reproduce, and after a period of time, they will send an attack wave at your factory, which if you ignore that for too long, those waves will eventually grow to the point where they start destroying buildings or large parts of your factory. So you always have to consider whether you want to take the time to run out there and kill those bugs, or if you want to just keep working on building up your factory, getting your research going, and risk the wrath of those bugs coming in at a later time, taking out key parts of your infrastructure. Back up here on the Zelda side, we have a quick run into Eastern Palace here on Kipp100. We'll likely see a venture down here into the dark room, see what he can get down there. Has no bow, so he won't be able to finish it, but at this point, just looking for some items. The game can get pretty difficult for the Zelda players compared to most normal randomizers you may have seen elsewhere, in that with this combination, the Factorio player is typically very slow to set up. So they're sending out very few checks at the beginning. We're about 11 minutes in, and we've probably only sent just a handful of things out of each factory, if anything, at this point. So the Zelda player is pretty much entirely on his own, and when both games are mixed up, all of those heart pieces and full heart containers and the little quality of life things that aren't essential to completing the seed, but sure help you get there, a lot of those are going to be locked away in technologies that are never going to get researched on the factory side. So we'll see a lot of kind of low percent, low heart, low items plays coming out of the Link to the Past players that you might not see. So we could see these players stuck on 4 or 5 hearts for a large portion of this game. So we see a check here into Mini Moldorm Cave on Megakidicarus' side. Looks like he has plenty of bombs. See if he can get through this. Still no sword or weapon or much of anything on his side. We do have a hook shot on Kippy's side, and just received a hammer from his Factorio player, so nice pickup there. Given how quickly that came, we'll likely see something similar coming out of eudaimonistic's factory in not too much longer. We see alwaysintreble down, expanding his power a little bit. You kind of have two approaches here where you can ramp up your power early and just not have to worry about it as the game progresses, or you just set up the absolute minimum that you need at the moment and occasionally revisit it just to ramp up as your factory grows. So you take a few extra trips down there to deal with it, but in exchange you get to be a little more efficient with the starting bits of iron. We see a game over up there on Megakidicarus' screen. Didn't quite catch what he was doing there. Could have been intentional just to get out of whatever mess he was in. We have some early iron production going up here on eudaimonistics, and a kind of early lab setup for alwaysintreble. You can pretty much never have too many iron gears or conveyor belts on the Factorio side. Factory must always grow, and so having those just available in a chest will help you just run over there, grab them, and not have to worry quite so much about handcrafting. And we see a pretty basic, just quick and dirty science setup here just to start getting the first few checks out of the Factorio world. When the Factorio players are looking at their technology tree, I haven't seen them spend too much time in it so far, but all of the techs are hidden, so they don't necessarily know what's going to come out until they complete that research, just like how a Link to the Past player won't know what comes out of a chest until they actually open it up. And so to compensate for just the sheer number of researches you can do and how long some of them can take in Factorio, there will be two different icons that we see in the tech tree. One of them will be a little more faded, signifying a non-advancement item. Those will be your rupees, your pieces of hearts, kind of some of the nice-to-have but not essential technologies in Factorio, like your flamethrowers, a lot of military stuff, things that aren't required for any of your sciences or your rocket components. So that's how these Zelda players kind of get into trouble, is the Factorio players are always going to focus their research on those clearly marked advancement technologies, and along the way they will ignore a whole lot of those unimportant checks, which will result in typically pretty low and pretty difficult gameplay for their Zelda partners. So we see a big long line of red science production over here for eudaimonistic. So we'll see probably the beginnings of his larger long-term science array. Can't quite see what's on those belts. Looks like potentially iron ore and maybe iron plates. Looks like two iron-colored things. So we'll see what is actually required to produce that red science. See a ice cave or ice rod cave check over on Kippy's side. Just a piece of heart, but you know what? I'm sure they're always glad to see even pieces of hearts coming out of these chests. Got himself up to 5 hearts, which this point in the seed can actually feel pretty good in this multi-world setup. Now we see MKI making the Eastern Palace play that Kippy did earlier. Don't remember if anything came out of the basement here, but he'll get to it shortly. Factorio players continuing on, setting up some power generation on eudaimonistic side. More iron set up. Looks like we have some efficiency modules possibly on alwaysintreble side that will help immensely with his power requirements early in the game. Throwing those into your labs, throwing those into your electric miners will reduce the power consumption of those buildings, which is typically the greatest amount of your power consumption comes out of those miners and your labs. So getting those early is always a nice touch. You can also get modules that increase the research speed of your labs or the production speed of your factories, and also some productivity modules that give you some free outputs from the same number of inputs, so it kind of increases the efficiency of the raw materials you're producing in your base. So overall, haven't seen too much crazy things coming out of the Link to the Past side. Looks like Kippy has a hammer and Megakidicarus doesn't. I believe we saw that come out of the factories, so hopefully we won't see that blocked for too long on the Megakidicarus side. We're still likely looking for a Moon Pearl. That may be an important first hint for these players, which is a good opportunity to talk about the hinting system that is part of the Archipelago setup. So every time you complete a check, which would be opening up a chest in Link to the Past or completing a research on the Factorio side, you will get 1 hint point. And in our current setup for this tournament, once a game completes 20% of its total possible checks, so either 20% of the total potential researches or 20% of the chests open up in either game, they will get the opportunity to do a hint in the console that they have running in the background, and that will let them see the exact location of any one item or one research that they're looking for. So as the Zelda players enter BK mode, if they run out of things to do, we may see a hint for a Moon Pearl to see most likely which specific technology it's locked behind in the Factorio seed. Or potentially it could be somewhere in the Zelda world and they just missed a check. It's a good way to kind of cut down on how long any particular player gets blocked in these multi-worlds, particularly when you get more and more players and more games. Sometimes an item can get locked away in a really weird place, so this gives players an option to find those items and get to keep playing their game. So the Link to the Past players are definitely looking for Dark World access. We have a couple different potential goals that they will be looking for, or that could potentially have been assigned when the seeds were generated. The most likely outcome is going to be a low to medium crystal fast Ganon, I believe, so they won't have to necessarily climb Ganon's tower and defeat Aga 2 in order to win the game. They'll just have to get a certain number of crystals, but there is a very small chance that we may see a pedestal seed or we may see a slow Ganon. So we'll keep an eye out whenever we see a player make it to the pyramid in the Dark World to see what their actual goal is. Because it could be anything as low as one crystal fast Ganon, and we could just see a Zelda player just suddenly win out of nowhere. Or it could be 6 or 7 crystal slow Ganon. So it can be a pretty wide variation on the Link to the Past player side. We see some bug combat going on down on eudaimonistic side. Looks like he got some combat robots sent to him by either his own research or as a gift from Link, making very quick work of that bug base. Those are always a nice thing to see. In Factorio, normally there's very specific researches that'll give you specific items, such as the flamethrower research will give you the flamethrower and the flamethrower fuel itself. But similarly to how in Link to the Past you have things like a progressive glove or a progressive sword or a progressive tunic, where you get that item and you just get the next one in the chain. So you go from no sword to fighter sword to master sword. We've implemented the same kind of logic to Factorio, where several very similar technologies get grouped together into a progressive kind of chain, such that a progressive flamethrower will start with the flamethrower itself and then proceed on to improved flamethrower damage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on through the chain. So if either player on their team finds just one of those progressive flamethrowers, the Factorio player will get the very first one in the chain, which guarantees the flamethrower. So you also see things like progressive automation, which makes you go from Factory 1s to Factory 2, the blue factories, onto Factory 3s. So we'll see that happen as the race goes on. We'll see what kind of things get sent to each player. And it looks like we had quite a bit of bug damage on eudaimonistic side. We see a lot of his iron burners have gone down. That might be an advantage that alwaysintreble gained from doing that early trip out to kill those bugs where he had that unfortunate death. Maybe he just made up a little bit of time there as we see all this wreckage surrounding eudaimonistic in his factory right now. So at some point, Kippy did find his bow, so we see him back here in Eastern Palace, getting ready to get, I'm not sure if it's a pendant or a crystal, but we will see here shortly. Hoping for a crystal in most cases, although in our very last race we did see a pedestal seed, so the play to get a pendant early worked out pretty well for them. So here's our first boss fight of the Link to the Past side. Making quick work of Armos here. Well done. Rewarded with a compass telling him he has all his checks here, and he gets his first crystal. They get their first crystal, so well done to them. Nice early lead here, getting that bow. We do see on the Megakidicarus side, he does finally have his hammer, so he may have some more things available to him in the near future. Both players still really looking for that Moon Pearl. Also, we have no progressive gloves yet, so quite a few really important items missing that our Zelda players are going to really want here sooner rather than later. They may be running out of checks and be resorting to using any hints that they may have earned so far. According to chat, we have seen a glove on the Lake Island, so that may mean we're going to have to find potentially, or that at least locks out a couple of ways into Dark World, knowing that you're not going to be able to get your Titan's Mitt until you can get on top of that island from the Dark World. So we may see something like Aga or some other path to the Dark World. Anyway, you're going to need that Moon Pearl. And apologies, I am only a casual Link to the Past randomizer player, so anyone who's willing to backseat commentate, please feel free to correct me if I make any wrong analysis here or point out anything I may have missed. So we have some automated smelting going on over here on the alwaysintreble side, getting his iron going. Pretty much always going to need a pretty decent amount of iron with the items that are available to be picked for our random red and random green and rocket silo ingredients. Many of them are heavy in iron requirements or steel requirements. You never like to see anything that requires steel, whether it be the steel barrels or just steel plates themselves. That's always a big slowdown having to set that up and produce that many more iron plates to get to your finish line. So we see Kippy stopping to think here for a bit. We may see our first hint coming out. And I think it might have been a hint for a flute. From what I can see. I didn't see any information pop up on the Factorio player side, so that means it's likely hidden somewhere in the Zelda players' game them on their own, so they'll have to find it for themselves. Potentially somewhere there in the Dark World, and they're going to have to find some way to get to that. Likely will require some amount of research from their Factorio partners. So we see Kippy, according to chat, we might have a mushroom that needs to be turned in. When you're doing this and you're kind of receiving checks out of nowhere, sometimes at a pretty rapid pace when the Factorio player gets his factory up and running, it is pretty easy to just miss an item that you received because you were concentrating on something else, or you missed that you received a particular technology in Factorio because you're focusing on building the next part of your factory there. So you always have to keep an eye out. Sometimes just take a second to stop and look at your inventory and your crafting menu and just see what's there and what you're going to have to do and what you have available to you. And that's a big part of why I personally find the Factorio part of this so interesting compared to just standard vanilla Factorio speedrunning. Is normally in Factorio, you know exactly what technologies you're going to need to research, exactly how many science packs will be needed to produce to research those, how many raw materials to make exactly that many science packs, So it's always, you kind of know exactly what you need to do, and it's a matter of figuring out what's the fastest way to do that. In this randomizer mode, you don't necessarily know how much research you're going to do. You don't know whether you're going to be needing to produce steel or you're going to be needing to ramp up your green circuits, depending on what the ingredients are for your randomized inputs to your green science and your rocket. So it's a lot more of a decision making as you go process, kind of a factorial routing problem where you always have to think to yourself, what do I need to do next? Do I need to ramp up smelting? Do I need to ramp up science pack productions? Do I need to ramp up science labs themselves, or do I just cut everything and just go for building my rocket? It's always a kind of interesting problem solving that you have to go through as you're working on building up your factory as fast as you can. So we see Kippy kind of attacking some bushes here. He might be BK'd here until he gets something out of his factory friend's game. Farming a very nice prize out of the bush bug there. 20 rupees coming out. Kind of cool 100 rupees every time you visit him. Maybe preparing for a Zora check, or just nice to have some extra cash lying around. I don't believe we have a Shop Sandy here today. Yeah, so we do have the occasional message in chat asking what you're watching. So I'll go through it again for any of our new viewers here. This is our Archipelago 2v2 Factorio plus a Link to the Past randomizer tournament, where we have 2 teams of 2 players each, where 1 player on each team is playing a Link to the Past, and their teammate is playing Factorio. And through the Archipelago setup and program, these 2 games have their items mixed up in between each of them, so that our Link to the Past players may start finding technologies for their Factorio partner, while their Factorio teammate may be performing researches to find items like the Moon Pearl that we're searching for right now. So you get some really interesting interactions here, where you'll start seeing items sent from each of these games at different rates, where early game, the Zelda players have a lot to do, while the Factorio players are not sending out anything because they're just building up their factory. And then as the factory player gets caught up, they'll start sending out a lot of stuff, which will suddenly potentially flood their Zelda player with a ton of options of different things that they can do. So earlier we saw Kippy get through Eastern Palace, so now we see Megakidicarus doing the same, making up some time here, since it appears that Kippy is blocked, waiting on anything to come out of the factory. So I'm sure alwaysintreble is getting an earful, listening to his partner just ask for anything to come as fast as he can get it. It can always be stressful early game for the Factorio player, just trying to make sure your Zelda partner has something to do to keep up in the race. So here we have MKI working on Armos here. Should be a pretty quick fight. Kippy taking a relaxing break there in the meadow, watching the lumberjacks do their work. We will see if Megakidicarus has any additional checks to do here. He may also be approaching BK mode. Looks like between the 2 players, they both have pretty similar items. Looks like Kippy has a magic mirror advantage over Megakidicarus, but without Dark World access, there's not a lot you can do with that. So I don't know if we've gotten a hint out of Megakidicarus here. He may be taking the time to do that now, potentially hinting for Moon Pearl or Glove or anything that he's looking for. We saw Kippy, they, at an earlier time, I believe, hinted for Flute, which appeared to not have been a helpful hint, as they have not gone and done any checks based off of that. Now, they've moved on from a pleasant break in the meadow to paying their respects here at the graveyard. Factorio's side, we see quite a lot of iron smelting going on. One of the aspects of the Factorio randomization is that the crafting time of every item is also randomized. Anywhere from 50% faster to 200% slower. So with the amount of smelting they have setting up, either they're just preparing for the future, or we may have a pretty long time on the time it takes to smelt iron plates, which may require just some additional smelters being put down than you might normally have to do in a factory, just to try to keep up with the demand that your factory has for all of those iron plates. So we see a good start to a science array here for eudaimonistic. Looks like maybe 10 or 12 labs going right there, fed by a big long line of red science pack factories. And we see personal Roboport equipment coming out of Zora. Not something that will likely be needed in the Factorio world. That's part of your armor set that you can equip at the higher tiers of armor. But with the progressive setup in Factorio, you have to find a couple progressive armors, which are marked as non-advancement items. So they're buried in there along with those 10 rupees and 10 arrows and pieces of heart and all that. So there's just like getting additional pieces of heart for the Zelda players. There's always some quality of life things that a Factorio player likes to see, but likely won't in this particular setup. So now that we have some big science coming out of eudaimonistic, we'll see if that can help out Megakidicarus here, who is also doing the same rupee farm we saw Kippy do earlier, just stocking up for the future. Feels good to have a nice full wallet. Again, trying to keep an eye. I don't think I've still noticed exactly what's required for the red science. I definitely see iron ore there, but I haven't quite caught what the second input is, and I also haven't seen what's required for the green science for our Factorio players. So we have a thrilling match here between Megakidicarus and eudaimonistic. On one side, Kippy and alwaysintreble on the other. Both of our Link to the Past players are thoroughly blocked, waiting on their teammates to ramp up their factories and get those researches out and get some additional checks available for the Zelda players. Kippy did get a Moon Pearl, but doesn't quite help until they get some way, potentially, to get into Aga's Tower to get Dark World access. We've already seen that one of the progressive gloves is on the Lake Island, so they won't be able to get Titan's Mitt here in the Light World. But I believe we need a Master Sword or a Cape to get there into Aga's Tower. So Kippy getting that Moon Pearl, I'm sure happy about that, but still not much to do. So hanging out here at the graveyard, guess they've decided that is the the hangout location of choice, awaiting any future checks to do. So our Factorio players building up still. We see alwaysintreble kind of emptying out their inventory here. When you're getting these free stacks of items from these technologies you're researching and technologies you are receiving from your Zelda player, it can very quickly fill up your inventory with a lot of junk you're never going to really want to use. The biggest culprits of that being fluid handling, where you get 10 stacks of empty barrels along with stacks of every different kind of fluid, from crude oil to sulfuric acid. That'll just fill up your inventory real good, along with Circuit Networks has, I think, 7 different items it'll dump in your inventory. So you'll see occasionally these chests littered around the factory that are just full of all sorts of goodies that you may love to see in a normal factory, but in this mode, you're just never going to have an opportunity to get to use those. So far, just looking at the progress of each of these Factorio players, we've seen a bit more of an automated and expansive science array on eudaimonistic side. Alwaysintreble is still kind of working off of a hand-filled or chest-filled setup here, just trying to get as many labs as he can going, so that he can help out his Link to the Past partner here, who is now hugging a rock there in the graveyard. I'm sure we'll get to let these Link to the Past players commiserate with each other at our post-game interview, because these blocks definitely do happen in this game mode. With the way the science is randomized in Factorio, all the sciences maintain kind of their original science cost. So the research that would have been, say, Spidertron, which costs a huge number of science packs, will award something random, but it's still technically the Spidertron research. And in our setup here, all the science costs are cut in half with the kind science cost setting. So instead of the normal 2,500 research cost, it would still cost 1,250 science packs. So sometimes important items can be locked behind those long researches, because they will end up earlier on in the science tree, because we also reshape the entire research tree. Instead of these really long paths where you go all the way from Automation 1 and progress through 20 or 30 techs until you get down to the rocket silo at the bottom, we reshape it into one of several shapes, such as a pyramid or a funnel or a diamond. And I think on our Factorio side, I've seen the worst case, which would be those dreaded large diamonds, where a large portion of the researches are kind of jammed into this diamond shape, where you're going to have to research one at the top, which is prerequisite to 2 below that, which are prerequisites to the 3 below that, and so on. And eventually it shrinks back down. So there's going to be one technology at the very bottom of that diamond that's going to require every single one of those researches above it to be completed to get it. And if there's something really important behind there, we're going to have to see a lot of research coming out of the Factorio side. And along with that, there's potential for one of these incredibly long researches to end up at the very top of that diamond. So that 1,000, 2,000 science pack cost research could end up being required to get to the 10 or 15 sciences that are further down inside of that diamond shape in the tech tree. So I'm sure our Factorio players are hoping that's really not the case, as the Zelda players are most likely complaining to them about lack of things to do. So we see some iron gears and iron pipes and steel coming out on the always in treble side. Looks like we have some engines required, probably for our green science here, and that is a gross requirement. Needs a huge amount of iron, 2 for each gear, 1 for each pipe, and 5 for each steel plate. And then on top of that, typically these engines are a pretty long craft time. And if those happen to get rolled to a particularly slow randomized craft time, it can take anywhere up to about 30 seconds to make a single engine. So if that becomes required for our science research, we may see some pretty large factories here, which may lead to some pretty large biter issues later on, as we see these players are both in a desert setup. It's always nice to be in a nice green lush forest, because those trees around you will suck up a whole lot of the pollution that you're producing out of this factory. You don't have that luxury here in the desert world. Normally trees are at a premium and you're cutting down quite a few of them just to make the power poles required for your factory. So you can get into some serious biter problems pretty quickly. And I don't really see a lot of weaponry available to either of our Factorio players. Normally, 45 minutes in, you'd love to see at least a flamethrower or a rocket launcher, just to have some way to protect yourselves from the bugs. But I see them both with a pistol and yellow basic ammunition. We did see eudaimonistic use some combat robots earlier, but all you get is just that initial stack of 100 of them, and they are a limited lifespan item. So if there's enough biter combat coming up here as they quickly ramp up their factories, we might see some real awkward issues with biters. So we'll see how that plays out as this continues on. All right, so there's another one of our chat questions of what the heck is this? It's a good opportunity to do the whole spiel again for all of our newcomers. This is our Archipelago 2v2 Factorio Link to the Past Randomizer tournament. We have 2 teams of 2 players. On each side, we have 1 player playing a Link to the Past, other player playing Factorio. And their items on their team are mixed up in between both players' games. So we will see Factorio players perform researches that may award items over to their Link to the Past partners, such as researching a hookshot or a master sword or a moon pearl. And similarly, we'll see Link to the Past players open up chests, and you may see a star icon pop out, which means that they found a technology for their Factorio player that may be required for them to launch their rocket. So our goal here is to have the Factorio player launch their rocket, and the Link to the Past player complete their goal, which typically is a low to medium crystal fast Ganon, but there is always a chance of perhaps a pedestal seed or a slow Ganon. These Zelda players don't know exactly what the settings are going to be when they start this. They know what chance any particular setting will be, but the only thing they can see at the start screen is if it's going to be a shop sanity, as they start with an extra large pile of rupees. But there's a chance for boss shuffle, there's a chance for entrance shuffle, there's a chance for inverted. A lot of interesting options for the Link to the Past player that they have to be prepared for in this format. So we see Kippy. They have now relaxed enough in their pleasant meadow and at the graveyard. Now they're doing a few laps around Kakariko here, throwing some bombs, opening up some bomb huts here, stocking up on arrows, bombs, anything they get. They are both stuck waiting for their Factorio partners to find any sort of progression. mostly trying to find anything to get them into Dark World access, whether it be something that lets them get up the tower to get in the Dark World, or to get access to one of the various portals, as they both have received their Moon Pearl. And we know one of the progressive gloves is on the Lake Island, so we know we already need Dark World access to get that, so we're not going to be seeing any sort of Titan myths here in the Light World. So one other important nuance to this particular mode that's pretty unique to Archipelago is the idea of when one of these players finishes, every check that remains in their game all at once is going to get sent over to their partner. So as soon as a Factorio launches their rocket, any research they haven't completed is going to get sent over to the Link to the Past player, just in the stream of 3 minutes of fanfare of Link holding up his hand and getting about 50 to 60 items all at once. Similarly, if the Link to the Past player does finish first, you'll see a huge stream of technologies get researched all at once for the Factorio player, and then their inventory just gets filled up with all sorts of treats and goodies that they may have been waiting for to complete their own game. So part of the strategy that these teams will employ is, if they think one of the teammates has the opportunity to finish quickly, they may cut off doing any checks just to race to the finish line, such that if the Factorio player knows all of the ingredients to launch their rocket and has access to them, they may cut off their research so that they can divert all of their smelting and all of their raw materials towards launching that rocket to get it completed that much sooner, which then will automatically complete all of their researches and send out anything that the Zelda player may need out of the Factorio game. So we'll see what happens here. Still waiting on any sort of Dark World access for the Zelda Link to the Past players. Maybe if we get a glove, we might see some action up on Death Mountain. But at the moment, they are finding new and fun places to hang out and spend some time. Visit some rooms you don't normally get to see in a race. Hear some fun background music that you don't normally get to hear. That's just all part of this multi-world format. It happens, and your team has to always have a plan of how to deal with it. Yes, if you are interested in taking part in these kind of multi-world games, particularly this Factorio, Link to the Past, or any of the other games that are currently supported in the Archipelago environment, you can go to archipelago.gg. It's Lago. Sorry, hard to spell. And there are setup guides for all the various different games. There'll be linked to the community Discord, where there's always a lot of people willing to help you get set up if you have any questions. The community is great, very responsive. There's all sorts of games currently integrated, 8 different games set up. If I can list them all right now, we see here Link to the Past and Factorio. We also have Ocarina of Time, Subnautica, Minecraft, Risk of Rain 2, Slay the Spire, and Time Spinner. So you and your friends can combine any combination of those games, any number of friends playing any different combination of games with any different settings that they prefer, all mixed up together, letting you play these games together in just really interesting ways. So I really encourage you to check it out and get it set up and join in on the fun. So there on eudaimonistic side, we see the disgusting large diamond setup as you see how many technologies are outlined in red, showing that they aren't available to be researched yet until you get all of the prerequisites. So there's going to be a lot of important items coming out that may take quite a while as they have to research a lot of the what I call junk technologies ahead of those known advancement items. So it might work in their favor to try to get some more labs down just to get those researches going that much faster. I'm sure they don't want their Link to the Past partners to just fall asleep on them, as they have been blocked here for quite a while. And yes, to answer chat, the Link to the Past players are completely at the whim of how quickly the Factorio players build up their research and get those items out. There may be some advanced skips. There's a list of what's allowed and what's not for the Link to the Past players in this format. I believe we typically err on the side of not allowing any of the extreme glitches, just to make the format a little more accessible to more players, to encourage a little more participation. So they're pretty much blocked for quite a while until we see the Factorio players get going here. So based off of them setting up, both of them setting up their green science instead of ramping up their red science more, makes me believe that they may have already exhausted most of their technology options that require only red science packs. So they have to now start getting into the green science, which I believe we saw requires engines, which are not cheap and not easy to make. So we're going to see some pretty large factories here. We're approaching an hour in, and we have not seen a whole lot of biter action. We might see some biter disasters coming in here in the near future, with the number of smelters going on and the amount of power production and research these Factorio players are doing. I'm sure by now the pollution clouds are off the edge of the screen, so you don't know what's out there in the darkness. There could be a big old biter base just right out of sight that's now mass producing biters that are gonna pay a visit to our Factorio players here, potentially in the near future. You can always check your production tab, which tells you has a tab for the pollution, so that you can see the pollution you're producing and what is consuming that pollution, which will include any biter bases. So that can give you at least a heads up that something may be coming your way, or that it's time to go out hunting for wherever that base is that's eating up that pollution. I don't think I've seen that out of either of our players, so they are just crossing their fingers and hoping for the best, and trying to do what they can for their Link to the Past players. And yeah, not sure what Megakidicarus is doing. I see him now down to 3 hearts. Oh, so yeah, that's a very interesting play. So there's a server in the background that's keeping track of all of the items that are sent to any particular player. So when he created a new game, he re-received all of those items that he had previously received immediately, and now he can go make this play to get just a few more checks using this key steal, and then he may restore his, or start playing his original save file, and the server will remember that he's done these checks. This is a kind of an interesting archipelago nuance here, utilizing kind of how the multi-world works here. Meanwhile, we see Kippy back to relaxing at the graveyard. Still not much to do. I don't think we've seen anything of note come out of the factory. So this has been quite a seed for these players. We've seen a lot of technology come out since these Link to the Past players got blocked, and just nothing has been for them. This has been real rough. So at some point, we may start seeing the Factorio players just say, to hell with it, we're going to launch our rockets and just get this research done, because those large diamonds we see always over on alwaysintreble, that's a lot of technology that you can't get to until you do a bunch of extra research that's in the way. The number of prerequisites to get through this is really extreme. So this is definitely a worst case scenario research-wise for the Factorio players. Oh, so it looks like Megakidicarus got a hammer, or he has a hammer. Both have actually have a hammer. The flute is what he's received that the other side doesn't have. So we may actually finally start seeing some action on the Link to the Past side here an hour and 30 seconds in. It looks like Megakidicarus is sticking with this seed, or this new save. We see him going into Eastern Palace, which I believe he previously full cleared. We'll see what his plan is here. Oh, getting the large big keys that he owns. So he's going to stick with this save file. He's going to re-kill the Armos to get that crystal again, and then we'll potentially see some action up on Death Mountain with that flute. Meanwhile, Factorio side, we see for eudaimonistic some green wire coming down. That is probably, since he's just feeding it into a chest, is going to be one of the 3 randomized rocket ingredients for the rocket silo. We see him hovering over it. In this Factorio randomizer, you have the ability to see what your rocket is going to require to actually build just by looking at the research. There'll be 3 icons there that you can hover over that tells you exactly which items are going to be required to build it. So green wires appears to be one of those 3. He's just getting those prepared. The rocket requires 100 parts to be built, and each one of those parts will require 10 items of 3 different randomized ingredients. So we're going to need roughly 1,000 of 3 different items to fully build the rocket. And you can produce a little less if you get access to some productivity modules, which will give you a couple free rocket parts as it's building. Yeah, so the play to back of escape from Megakidicarus may pay off huge here. Getting that flute that Kippy does not have access to. We'll see what items we get off of the mountain once MKI catches up on this re-clear of Eastern Palace. Kind of a really interesting way this is played out, that he was blocked for so long. He literally found it faster to start a new game to try to get those checks in rather than just sit around and wait for the Factorio players. So a very cool play out of him here. We'll see how well it pays off. Factorio players still ramping up their science. We see on the alwaysintreble side, we do see some green wires being produced there. So he's also preparing for his eventual rocket launch. Now I'm seeing some iron sticks coming in on eudaimonistic side, possibly looks like some stone, so we may see some rails required for the rocket silo. Yep, and there he's put in rails, so we'll get that set up. That may be 2 of our 3 requirements. The Factorio players may actually be close to winning here, such that we see the Factorio players finish, which will send out all of their research to their partners, letting them actually continue the game. So maybe a little bit of a asynchronous race here as we get to watch the Factorio players do their thing, which may lead into the Link to the Past players being able to also play the game at some point. Looks like we've hit another threshold of confused chat people, so I'll once again go through it. This is the Archipelago 2v2 Factorio Link to the Past Randomizer Tournament, where we have 2 teams of 2 players, 1 player on each team playing Link to the Past, the other playing Factorio, and all of the Link to the Past items and Factorio technologies are mixed up and randomized between both games, such that Link may open up a chest and find a star icon, which denotes a technology for the Factorio player, and the Factorio player will get whatever that technology is, such as a flamethrower, or a faster inserter arm, or a faster factory, while the Factorio player proceeds through and does researches, which may either get a technology for themselves or potentially an item for their Link to the Past partner, like a Master Sword or a glove or anything that may be helpful for our Link to the Past players here. And it looks like while I was talking, we got a book for both Link to the Past players. So we may have very similar research paths, research speeds going on between the 2 Factorio players for how long we were waiting for anything to happen just to have both of the players get into desert here within moments of each other. So we'll see if this gets anything. I'm not sure if this is a crystal or a pendant dungeon. Again, we still don't know what the goal is going to be for the Link to the Past players. It could be fast Ganon. It's a highest % chance to be a fast Ganon, but there is a chance that it could be a slow Ganon. It could be a chance for a pedestal seed, and it'll be some random number of crystals required, both to fight Ganon and to get into Ganon's towers. So the Link to the Past players are just doing what they can with what they have, and they're hoping for a good goal. I'm sure they will both, as soon as they can get into the Dark World, will race to the pyramid to check what their goal is, to see how much they actually have to do in order to reach their goal and complete their side. So we're looking for both players on a team to finish. So that will be the Factorio player launching their rocket and the Zelda player completing their goal, whatever it is. And the combined time of both players on the team will be their final score, and the faster combined time will be the winner of this particular match. So in order to make the Factorio game, for people familiar with Factorio in its vanilla state, to make it play in roughly the same amount of time that you would expect a Link to the Past randomizer to take, it's limited such that you will only need red and green science to beat the game or to research everything possible within the Factorio seed, including the rocket silo research, so that you don't have to set up a huge factory to get all the way to the end. You have a pretty quick path to getting your rocket silo down and launching your rocket. In this unfortunate case, there's been potentially a lot of key Link to the Past items that are buried somewhere in the Factorio tech tree that haven't been set out or sent out. So they've been blocked for quite a while, while the Factorio players are scrambling to get anything and everything done that they can. So I'm still surprised we have not seen a lot of biter activity out of this very dry, mostly treeless world here that we're looking at on the Factorio side. Must have gotten just a tiny bit of luck in their favor here for all the bad luck they've gotten with this research tree they're dealing with. Not to have to constantly go out and deal with biter attacks and biter nests. But I think there may still be a decent amount of pollution to be created here. We do see the rocket silo research going on eudaimonistic side, so he may have everything he needs, given that his Link to the Past player probably still requires quite a bit, or potentially requires quite a bit of items depending on what his goal is. If eudaimonistic is going straight for the rocket silo, they are making the play that he just beats the game, stops his timer, and triggers the automatic send out of all of his remaining checks through his completing of his goal of launching the rocket. All right, so it looks like we just got silvers sent out to Megakidicarus on the Kippy side. Still, unfortunately, not a lot of activity. Luckily, got to stretch their legs a little bit and take a trip over to Desert Palace. But once that was completed, kind of nothing left to do. While Megakidicarus up there, through that very clever play of literally restarting his game in order to use his keys and escape a little differently, such that he could get a few extra checks that Kippy didn't get. Found the flute through doing that, which gave him access to Death Mountain here and some additional stuff. So that was a pretty big play that may give that team a sizable advantage on the Link to the Past side. We'll see here shortly as eudaimonistic's rocket silo research progresses. Looks like he's roughly about 35-40% through it. With the free items that the Factorio players receive each time they receive a technology, they will get a free pre-built rocket silo when they complete this research. So as soon as that research is done, he can throw down the rocket silo and just start throwing in the ingredients that he's been preparing ahead of time in order to get that rocket completed at a record pace. So we'll see whether he has all three of those ingredients. I haven't been able to confirm exactly what's required. I believe at least green wire is based off of some setup that I've seen both players do, just getting that going early since they have that technology available. I don't believe we've gotten a hint sent out of either of the Factorio players. I haven't been keeping close tabs on that. Again, to explain the hint system that's part of Archipelago, every check you complete in your game, whether it be researching a technology in Factorio or opening a chest and receiving an item in Link to the Past, that gives you 1 hint point. And once you have received enough hint points, that's equivalent to 20% of the total checks available in your game. You are allowed to use the Archipelago console to hint for one specific item, and it will be it will tell you exactly where that item is in what person's game. So it will tell the Factorio player if it's under a specific research that's somewhere in the research tree, or it'll tell you exactly what chest it is in the Link to the Past game. And it'll even tell you if you're in some sort of entrance randomizer where that entrance is. So you can even use those hints to kind of strategically find where a particular dungeon may be by trying to hint for a check that's within that dungeon, and it'll tell you where that entrance is located. So if you're trying to find entrances but you don't specifically need items, that's an alternative way to spend your hint points. And we see a Master Sword finally for Megakidicarus. I believe that should give him Dark World access through Aegina's tower. No, could be. Again, I will apologize for my general lack of knowledge on the Link to the Past Randomizer. I am just a very casual player, so... Oh, so gloves are on Ether Tablet, and we know the other gloves are on the Lake Island. So we actually know where both gloves are, but actually don't have them. So here we see Megakidicarus taking the run over. And he has his book here. And there's that glove. So there we go. That play to get the flute is paying huge dividends to Megakidicarus here, pulling way ahead while Kippy is still stuck waiting for something out of the Factorio player's game. Looking back over at our Factorio side, we see eudaimonistic getting close there with the rocket silo research, about 75% done. Alwaysintreble still trying to research things, potentially finding something for Kippy to progress with. No luck so far, but it's in there somewhere. So we finally see our first player here in the Dark World, potentially making his way over to check what our goal is. So here, 1 hour, 15 minutes plus into this race, we will finally get to see what the Link to the Past players need to do to win. And it could be a pretty wide range of outcomes here. We will see. Looks like we need 6 crystals Vast Ganon, if I saw that correctly. We see a check here. I believe we saw a pendant on Thieves Town and Turtle Rock. And Ice Palace as well. Thank you, chat. So hopefully that's some good news to Megakidicarus, not having to deal with Ice Palace or Turtle Rock, as we don't have a cane quite yet, but we will need that potentially to get through Misery Mire. We'll see which of the 7 crystals that Megakidicarus decides to skip, as he only needs 6. Right, so chat's helping me out here. So if he skips Mire, he should be able to do everything else. So it's just a matter of execution at this point for him. Without having to do Turtle Rock or Mire, we don't have to really worry about pendants at all. So MKI here, heading back into Desert. I suppose since he did reset his game, he will need to re-clear this just like how he re-cleared Eastern Palace. So really we have a player here doing a 8 crystal run, which is a pretty unique opportunity here to watch. And yes, with the to explain what may happen here, eudaimonistic on the Factorio side is getting very close to finishing his rocket research, and we'll see he's placing it down kind of right there in the middle of his factory. If he opens it up, we will see exactly what's required to build it. Can't quite make up his mind where he wants to put it. There he goes. If he has all of the ingredients and all the technology to build it, when he launches his rocket, it will send out every single technology that he has not yet researched, which will include most likely quite a few pieces of heart, full heart containers, swords, tunics, anything that the Link to the Past player needs. So we potentially, unless eudaimonistic is really missing something or really slow, we'll likely see him finish here first, or at least finish before his Link to the Past partner, and Megakidicarus will be in a much better position to fight Ganon after that happens. Yep, so we see the rocket producing here on eudaimonistic side, so he has all of the ingredients. I'm seeing rail segments, chain rail signals, and green wire. So those rail signals are not my personal favorite, require a ton of iron to produce, 5 iron plates per, but it looks like he has a pretty large stockpile of those already ready to go. And so his rocket's progressing, looks like a good initial start on that. He unfortunately has not gotten any productivity modules to kind of reduce the raw materials that need to go into it. But that also does have a cost of making the individual rocket parts take longer to produce. So you always have to balance the actual build time of the rocket against whether you need to save ingredients or not. But in this case, he doesn't appear to have any helpful modules for his rocket, so he's just doing it with a empty silo there. So just manually jamming in those ingredients. You can just control click in an empty spot in your inventory, and it'll automatically just fill up the building you're interacting with anything you have in your inventory that matches the product being produced, in this case the rocket ingredients. So this thing's just tearing along here. We're at about 50%, so we should have our first player finish here within a couple of minutes. And I'm sure Megakidicarus will love to have quite a few more pieces of heart here, a lot more health. Most likely we'll get some sort of armor and sword upgrades. There's going to be a lot of items that'll be coming over to the Link to the Past side, and we'll get to watch as the fanfare happens about 60 times for every individual item that gets sent across. The Zelda player will be functionally stunned for about 3 minutes. You always have to be careful on the Link to the Past side not to be in a dangerous position, as there will always be a few ticks of enemies getting to move and potentially hit you while you're receiving your items. So always good to try to be somewhere safe. Hopefully he's out of this tile room before this starts happening, because that could be a little awkward on green mail 3 hearts trying to dodge all these. But it looks like Udai is trying to ramp up potentially some iron research here, so he may have exhausted the stockpile he prepared ahead of time, and now he's relying on whatever his factory can produce. You see him kind of cutting off the feed of iron to other parts of his factory just to get this rocket completed that much faster. But on the Always in Trouble side, we do see the rocket silo research just about to be finished. So if he's had an opportunity to stockpile a few more resources here, he may not be too far behind in the completion, and we'll finally see Kippy get to do something, anything, as he's... It'll be interesting to ask about their mind state as they've been kind of standing around doing nothing for approximately an hour now. That can't be a good feeling in a race environment. I believe if you have your menu open when you're receiving the items, it just won't do anything until you exit the menu. Link's just got to show off all that loot he's getting to his audience. He doesn't want to let anything slip through the cracks. So Megakidicarus climbing Harris Tower here. We do know it's a 6 crystal fast gain requirement, and I believe so far he has 2 crystals, one out of Desert and one out of Eastern. So this will be the 3rd. If we ignore that, at one point he actually reset his game and started over in order to do a different usage of his small keys in Escape in order to get a couple extra checks, which got him the flute. It basically unlocked the entire game by doing that, as Kippy is still stuck without his flute, or their flute, apologies, and just doesn't have anything to do, as their Factorio partner has not found anything to help them out. So we see the rocket starting there on Always in Treble's side. We see the chain rail signals and green wires going in, and presumably the rail segments as well are over there somewhere. On eudaimonistic, we are about 15% away from getting this rocket launched and getting our first completion. In the meantime, Megakidicarus getting his 3rd crystal. Should head back to the Dark World here and get working on, we have, I believe, Skullwoods and Pod and Swamp Palace as the likely remaining targets for the 3 crystals. And actually, as I'm looking at this, Always in Treble, his silo is just filling up at incredible speed. He is catching up here in a hurry. We may have another photo finish here on the Factorio side. Just yesterday we had a match where the Factorio players finished about 13 seconds apart in a similar scenario where one player got their rocket started earlier, but the other player had a bigger stockpile of ingredients and managed to catch up and pull ahead in the last couple of seconds. So this is incredibly close between these 2 players. Here we see Udai. He's launching it. Always in Treble, he's about 6-7% away. So we're going to have another, within a minute of each other, finish on these Factorio players. Very well done to both of them. Unfortunately, it looks like Megakidicarus has a incredible lead on the Link to the Past side. And here we will see the fun stun that's going to happen to our Link to the Past player. First thing we saw was a ice rod come up. There, the tracker updates pretty much immediately, so you can see there to MKI's left everything that he received. So we already have a butter sword in there, blue tunic. We did get the red cane out of that and ice rod. Pretty much everything except for no cape. So likely there's another sword somewhere there in the factory to get you through the to get that master sword to get through that annoying bat at the Hyrule Castle there. Let's see. We have some official times from racetime.gg. We have eudaimonistic finishing in 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 37 seconds. And Always in Treble finishing just behind in 1 hour, 28 minutes, and 3 seconds. So well done to both of them. I'm sure both of these Link to the Past players are excited to have all of this loot, especially Kippy, who after probably taking a short nap there, they are excited to actually get to play again, and probably feeling some pressure to get caught up. Their hope is that the other Link to the Past player was similarly blocked, but we know they were not. So we see Megakidicarus just slowly inching his way through Skullwoods here, going for his 4th crystal. It's been going for quite a while, shouldn't be too much longer of the item spam, but I'm sure the two players are loving finally getting all of this progression and all this quality of life coming over from the factory players finishing. So that's completed for both players. I'll go ahead for new people dropping in. This is the Archipelago Factorio Link to the Past 2v2 Randomizer tournament, where 2 teams of 2 players. On each team, we have 1 player playing Factorio and the other player doing a Link to the Past, and all Factorio technologies and all Link to the Past items are mixed up in between the 2 games. So you have sometimes on the Link to the Past side, you'll see a star icon pop up, which signifies that something has been sent over to the Factorio player, a technology that they may require to launch their rocket. And on the Factorio side, anytime they complete a research, it may be a random technology for themselves, or it could be a item for their Link to the Past partner. So both players on the team are trying to complete their goal. For the Factorio player, they're trying to launch their rocket. For the Link to the Past player, their goal isn't known from the beginning. It's a bit of a mystery until they visit the Dark World Pyramid, which will tell them what they need to do. In this game, we are doing a 6 crystal fast Ganon, and we see Megakidicarus there with his 4th crystal in hand. Unfortunately for Kippy, they were blocked for quite a long time, so they have a bit of catch up to do. This is definitely Megakidicarus' race to lose here. So I believe Kippy so far has 2 crystals from Eastern and Desert, while Megakidicarus has completed Tower of Hera and Skullwoods in addition to those first 2. So looks like MKI's on his way here to Swamp Palace. We're going to continue to assume, even with all these items, that he may skip Mire unless he decides to do that in lieu of, I believe, Palace of Darkness, maybe our last other crystal. But here he is, opening up the dam, getting ready to head into Swamp Palace here. You may notice some weird chests that aren't open. Earlier in this race, Megakidicarus actually reset his game and started over in order to change the usage of his small keys in Escape in order to get a few additional checks in, where he found his flute, and that gave him just an incredible lead here on the Link to the Past side. So very good play by him. Very unusual strategy that was enabled by this Archipelago setup, as the Archipelago server in the background remembers all of the items that have been checked between both games. So as soon as he reset, he just re-receives all of those items that were previously checked into his new game. Here we will have Kippy finally about to get into the Dark World, where they will get their check on what their goal is they do not know that it is a 6 crystal fast Ganon yet. That's probably going to be a bit frustrating for them given how long they've already been waiting. Unfortunately, our timers were both from the Factorio side and those players have stopped them, so we don't have a on-screen timer, but we're at about 1 hour 35 minutes into this race so far. Here's the check for a 6 crystal fast Ganon. Kippy deciding where they want to go next, while Megakidicarus continues to work his way through Swamp Palace here. He knows he has everything he needs to beat it, so he's just go-moding everything he has to do for these last 2 crystals. We see both Factorio players just kind of doing a post-game analysis, just looking at that disgusting tech tree. You can see how many technologies end up in those large diamond layouts, where you can see there's one available at the top that by itself is a prerequisite for about 11 different technologies, all as part of that diamond there. So that was really kind of the key part that was slowing down pretty much everything in this particular seed, that the Factorio players did not have an easy time getting any research and any checks done. It turned out that it was just easier for them to race to the finish line and complete their goal to trigger the game forfeit to send out all the remaining researches just to get their Link to the Past players going. So there's the 5th crystal for Megakidicarus. Just one more, and then a Ganon kill will comfortably win this race for his team. We did finally see that flute out of Escape that Kippy actually hinted for early on. So they knew it was in Escape, but through their initial use of their small keys, weren't able to get to it. So they were stuck in BK mode for an incredibly long time, opening up this big lead for MKI, who is now heading to Pod to get his 6th crystal. See, alwaysintreble, enjoying some of the free treasure he got from the completion with his power armor and exoskeletons, letting him just race around the world. Kippy heading into Skullwoods to go for their 3rd crystal. So as we watch these Link to the Past players work their way through their respective dungeons, go ahead and do my sales pitch for Archipelago, which is the software that enables this very unique multi-world setup, where we have two extremely different games, all kind of integrated into this one platform. Currently, there's 8 different games supported, with a couple more on the very near horizon. You can already see a link to the past here, along with Factorio. As part of SGLIVE 2021, we have a separate 2v2 Minecraft randomizer tournament going on that uses the same Archipelago platform, but with a completely different game. And it showcases how you can even do these randomizers in a multiplayer co-op situation, where you have 2 Minecraft players playing in the same world, trying to complete their achievements and checks in that Minecraft environment. Just shows kind of how many different ways there are to play as part of this. And you may have friends who have no interest in doing any sort of Zelda randomizer or anything like that, but perhaps they enjoy a good game of Slay the Spire or Risk of Rain, which are also options to be part of a Archipelago game. There's also Ocarina of Time and another Metroidvania called Time Spinner that I wasn't familiar with up until it was integrated as part of Archipelago. So you always have an opportunity to learn new games as part of this that you just didn't know were a part of this. And so I encourage anyone who's interested in this, you can go to archipelago.gg, where there are setup guides and a link to the Discord, where there's a very helpful community that can help you with any tech issues you have getting it set up, as well as you can find individual communities for each of the games that are integrated with Archipelago. It's a lot of fun. It's a very unique and a cool platform. I'm really excited with what's coming out in the future. In the upcoming release, we may see a certain Metroid game being included as part of this, along with Secret of Evermore. So keep an eye out for those, if those sound interesting to anybody currently watching this. Yes, we do see Always in Trouble down there, just taking care of some bug bases that they luckily didn't need to deal with during their actual factory building. Looks like there's some nice, convenient forests off screen that may have been gobbling up some of the pollution they were making, that may have saved them from bug disaster. So here we see Megakidicarus working on his last crystal here. Taking out Helmasaur, hopefully in short order. And he's in pretty good shape here with Blue Mail, Buttersword, quite a few hearts thanks to the Factorio player finishing. So Megakidicarus should have all of the crystals required to get into his fast Ganon fight. So once that's completed, we will have the Megakidicarus eudaimonistic team finished, and we will have a winner of this race. Just from a little while ago that Kippy was not able to actually complete Desert earlier because they did not have a glove, so they need to go back to get that crystal as well at some point. But unless some unimaginable disaster hits Megakidicarus, he should. He's just double checking his goal there, making sure he didn't miss anything. And in he goes. Let's see how this Ganon fight goes and potentially get your GGs ready. Right, so far appears to be going well for Megakidicarus. Got his torch glitch, looks like. It has silver arrows, I believe, so there we go. He will stop his timer as soon as he steps here into the Triforce room, and we will have our winner. Down there on the Factorial partner, you can see the link to the past version of the forfeit where all of those items just flew into his inventory. And we have official finish time for Megakidicarus of 1 hour, 46 minutes, and 44 seconds. A very long and trying seed here. And unfortunately, we're not going to have time for a post-game interview as this seed went quite a bit longer than normally anticipated. So we're kind of butting up against another schedule. So I will start closing out here. Unfortunately, we won't have time to watch Kippy finish. But check out archipelago.gg to learn more about this and other games that are all integrated through the Archipelago software. Ton of fun, ton of ways to play with different friends who like different games. Come in, become part of the community. We have almost daily games where anyone can just show up with a file that tells them what game you want to play and what settings, and you'll get rolled into a big old multi-world. We also run periodic giant async seeds where you'll have 255 and possibly even more games all rolled together. So come check it out, and congratulations to Megakidicarus and eudaimonistic on their win today. I'm Megakidicarus. Hope you all enjoyed this showcase and this very fun and new multi-world setup, and hope to see you all in the future.